the consciousness of music was always hip hop, and I'm certainly like, I was at that time and to this day, like I'm listening to hip hop, I was down, but I always wanted to make like folk rock music.
That was musician Andrew St. James. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this episode, Andrew picks up where he left off in part 1. That episode dropped Tuesday, and if you haven't listened to that yet, please go back and check it out. Here, Andrew talks about life during and after high school. Highlights include going briefly to school on the East Coast, getting a musical residency in Los Angeles, going on trial for a federal crime, and establishing a monthly music night here in the city he grew up in. Please follow Andrew on social media and check his website for release and event info. That's www.andrewstjames.com. Here's Andrew.
I was like in the jazz band. I was kind of like, I was brought to that school kind of as when I applied there, I was thought of as some sort of like the future of the music program or something, like one of several people. And so I was put into the jazz band. I played piano, which was awesome, actually. The dude who was the leader of the jazz band was this guy named Scott Foster, who still gigs around town and shit, and he was always really decent to me. And actually, some of the people who I was in the band with, older and younger, now are doing real music things, including a partner of mine who named Cesar Maria Hamilton, lives down in Los Angeles, and I have a band called Juan Wayne with him. He was in the jazz band, he's 2 years younger than me. He was very talented. Just like Jimmy Stack, who's like a DJ, who's friends with Diplo and all them, is like lives in New York, and he was in the band. There's a handful of other people that were like in that world of that kind of weird subtext of that tiny school that were actually kind of
These kids all went decent. To Urban?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So y'all were screwing around. Did anything get serious in the high school years?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, not at all. Yeah. Well, it's funny because like there's like, it's a mixture of like, yeah, I don't know. It felt like a mixture of people doing like in that world, like people doing music to like get up, like go to regular college, I played high school baseball because I lost a bet, and I just like got drunk every day we played it, and it was great. I never was played because I was terrible and drunk and but it was so fun, it was so fun. But for most people on that team, even we're like, it was like, oh well, when I go to UCLA, when I apply, like I was a varsity high school baseball player, So I was like, yeah, man, you're looking at a varsity high school baseball player right here, dude. Like fuck, man. Like don't look up my stats though. But yeah, the same thing with the jazz band shit, where it was like all these people were like kind of like, oh, I can play the fucking tuba or whatever, and it was like no one who really actually wants to play music, and so for me, I started writing songs solo when I was about 16. I bought a guitar. And I started teaching myself how to play guitar. I started recording my own demos because there was no one else to play with.
Right.
And growing up here too, like, the consciousness of music was always hip hop. And I'm certainly like, I was at that time and to this day, like I'm listening to hip hop, I was down. But, I always wanted to make like folk rock music.
Folk rock. I
always wanted to be like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like Bob Dylan. I wanted to be in the Rolling Stones, like to this day. So, and but no one was really interested in that. So it was very isolating. But I didn't really give a shit. So I just did it by myself until I found a way in to do it for more people, I guess. And at that point, I think is when things kind of started to take off.
Do you remember what those songs might have been about when you were still in high school?
It was about rich girls.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, rich girls. I had a lot of songs about rich girls, still do. I try to step away from old tropes, but it's hard not to.
That's a classic.
I have a lot of songs about death, I think. My birth father died when I was 15. And I was like after some level of rejection with him, where like I went to see him and it just went really poorly. And I kind of always assumed I could like see him later and like level with him as an adult. And I understand I was like an accidental child, to whatever, put myself in his own shoes. Never got the chance.
Right.
And I was like at that point in time, I thought a lot about that. I had some other friends in high school who also passed away.
Oh.
And death was always like a big like kind of consciousness in my, like, a part of my consciousness. And so I was like always kind of like wrangling with that, I think. And still, I still am, you know. I think we all do in our own way. And, you know, for times it goes away and other times it comes back. But when I was like angsty and 15 years old, you know, it was certainly like, it was like, what does it all mean? You know, like,
right.
You know, everything's so profound at that point.
So a little bit of teenage angst and what's the word? Existential
questioning.
Questioning.
Yeah,
Thank you.
questioning.
Yeah.
A little existential questioning. But yeah, I mean, some of the songs are actually quite good. But the
You
a
recorded
lot
any
of them,
of them back then?
Oh yeah. I've recorded them on a microphone computer, computer microphone that was like
Inside the
laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just 10 years ago we're talking about, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not very long ago. Not
ancient. Okay.
But yeah, I didn't know as shit about recording, and through that, I kind of when I bullshitted my way into working with a producer, I watched him work, and then I started to steal from him as to like how he was doing it, and I like figured out my own shit. And then my first record that I recorded, as Andrew St. James, was released when I was right after I graduated high school. I was 17 when we recorded it, 18 when it came out. And I recorded most of that in my mom's bathroom. Yeah. That's like of the songs called like Cassidy is a song that's like still listened to and stuff. And, you know, it's all like literally just me in my mom's bathroom.
Yes.
So, you know, like, cause I thought it sounded better, I guess, you know.
Do you want to share the story? Cause I can't remember if I recorded it. The story of how you got the name.
Oh, Andrew St. James.
Story, yeah.
Oh man,
let's hear that.
So so my birth father's name is John McMahon. My birth mother's name is Katie Sullivan, and I was adopted by Nathan Naiman and Carol Casp.
Okay.
And so I was given the name Andrew Naiman when I was a baby. And I, growing up, I kind of always, you know, I didn't really think twice about it. When I was in high school, people would call me like Naiman. I'm not sure why. I was always like last name Naiman. It's like a little infamous or something. But it never really felt right to me. You know, like I mean, I don't know. I never really felt like Andrew Naiman. Like the name didn't really feel like.
Was it an identity thing being adopted, or just the name itself, the phonetics of the name?
I think it was. I'm very much my parents' child, you know. I think it was the name phonetics.
Yeah.
That was like a little cumbersome for me.
Yeah.
And then when I came down to the point of trying to do something publicly, I had the question before it was raised to me, like, is this the right name I should go under? Should I be called like, you know, I don't know, like James Blake or something? You know, like what should I be calling? What's my name? You know, and I had the song called St. James Gate, which was my birth father died of, I believe, liver cirrhosis. And it was essentially a kind of a dark, like childish joke about dying of alcoholism, like an Irish exit. And, and so I had that, and I had met this through kind of weaseling. I had met met Jim Greer, I've mentioned earlier, who's a record producer who kind of mentored me and is still close to me. And Jim was part of a crew called the Miranda Brothers, who were like DJ crew. They toured with Handsome Boy Modeling School. He was in that band with Dan the Automator. He was in I guess Brandon was in Glassjaw, but he was in Head Automatica with Gerald Palumbo, and anyway, they were all kind of old school San Francisco production people, and he had most recently at the time done Foster the People, Mark Foster's like early recordings and stuff before that the Pumped Up Kick song got exploded, which is another story. But anyway, yeah, I kind of met him, and I tried to convince him to record me because I needed a way out of high school. And out of urban school. I was like, fuck, I need to get out of here. And I somehow managed to get him to, you know, he is a very kind man. But he was willing to record me. And he had a manager at the time named Tara, Tara Ollinger, and Tara lives in Los Angeles, and Tara's maybe one of the most beautiful women I've ever met. And at 16, she must have been like 30 or something. And I was like 16 years old, and I just was, when I met her, I was like, oh my fucking God, dude. Like, I've like, what? Like, who are you? Like, you know, I was like tattooed, like beautiful redhead girl. I was like, dude, you're amazing. Like, I'm done, you know, and totally smitten. And so but she, you know, she came, you know, when I've tried to make a deal with Jim to do a proper record, she came and she basically told me, you know, she's like, well, you know, Andrew Naiman isn't really going to cut it. I don't think that's a very good name, but you have this song called St. James Gate. Maybe you should consider like Andrew St. James. And I was like, Tara, whatever you want me to be called, like I will fucking do that, you know?
Yes.
And, yeah, so I was just convinced by like a beautiful woman to be called Andrew St. James, and it stuck, you know. But mostly just because I never felt really right in my name in the beginning, you know. So like I think that I was like, I'm anointed now, you know, like okay, man, yeah, and I ran with it, and it's yeah, I've at this point more people know me as that than Andrew Naiman, you know.
Yeah.
My like 1,000 Facebook friends from high school, you know. Like,
yeah.
There's like more than that in real life.
Well, I'm glad you were smitten, and I'm glad that's the name she suggested, because she could have probably suggested literally anything, and you would have been like, yeah.
Likely,
Andrew
yeah.
Fartsucker.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. She was like, yeah, that's the new joint in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
If you call yourself Andrew Shitbag, dude, like, it's going to be big in LA, bro.
Straight to the top.
That's it. Yeah, like, wow. Cool.
Okay, do you want to talk about life? So you said that kind of helped you escape high school.
Oh, for sure.
What have you been doing since the end of high school?
Oh, man. So I released...
Or did you graduate?
I graduated.
Okay.
I graduated, and then I got in to... My mother never had the opportunity to go to college, and her family didn't believe she should go to college because she was a woman, which is really fucked up. And she, like, spent years and years of her life, like, dealing with, you know, the repercussions of that. And she always wanted me to go to school because I had the opportunity and she didn't. Right. And so I was an asshole, and I was like, I don't want to go to school, but for you, I will like maybe do that, you know. And I got into Berklee College of Music, which was at the time the best music school in the world, on the wrong instrument.
Boston, right?
Yeah.
Wait, the wrong instrument.
Wrong instrument, yeah, dude.
Which one?
I played jazz piano at the time, and I was trying to get on jazz piano, but I went into the audition, and they were like, "You're here for guitar." Oh. They didn't have a piano in the room, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had to like sight read jazz charts on guitar, which I did actually. But I was in Los Angeles, where I drove down to LA for the thing, and it was at this big. Like rental SIR is like a big studio rental place where they have like, you know, like big Standing Max and shit will go and rehearse, and the college had like rented out the thing, and they're in that space there's like these huge fucking bathrooms with all these like urinals and stalls and shit, and I did this audition, and I was like, dude, I'm fucked, like, yeah, like I'm fucked, yeah, well, I guess, you know, I didn't really want to go to school anyway, but yeah, there's no way, you know, like, fuck this, and I went to like, you know, hit the head before I left, and in the stalls there was like, you know, there's like maybe 25 stalls in this room, and there was like at least 10 that were occupied, and there was like a bunch of like young men weeping. Weeping. And I was like, damn, I like kind of looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, damn, like I don't care that much about this shit. Like, wow, I'm out. But yeah, somehow they still let me in, and so I made a promise to my mom, and I went for a semester. Okay. And I met a lot of really great people who now are doing really great stuff, but it was you know, school is never for me anyway. So I was like, yeah, fuck that. And I had, at that period of time, that same September that I went out to Boston, Massachusetts, I had released my first record called Doldrums.
Okay.
And Doldrums got picked up on CMJ, was still a thing at that point, College Music Journal. And I was like, that record was being spun. I was like on the top, like it was ranked in the top 10.
Oh, wow.
And I was getting all these, like, I had paid for a publicist that was super cheap and really reasonable. This guy named Josh Bloom was really kind in New York, and he, you know, suddenly I was getting like front page USA Today, and like all this fucking crazy shit was happening, and I'm like at fucking college, like being this fucking blows, you know, and what am I doing? And And there was like, I'm getting all these calls being like, you need to act now if you want to like take advantage of this shit, And so I remember in that like October, I went down to New York to play CMJ solo.
I was just about to ask if you were playing out also.
I had started, but I never toured. And I was like, I went to New York as a kid with my dad to see his family and shit. But I never really been there as an adult. And I was like, freshly 18. And I get this, like booking for CMJ. And I go, this club's not there anymore. It's in the Lower East Side called like Living Room, I think is what it was called. Yeah. I don't think it's a thing anymore. But I was booked for something, and I rolled down there, and I just remember like taking Amtrak, with my guitar. I was like playing solo, and I was like fucking like totally awestruck by New York, I was like, man, I'm fucking 18. Like it's all happening to me, like, oh my God, And I went and played this like fucking awful show. There's like 3 friends got their fake IDs taken, which is good business for me because we were like making fake IDs at the time, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just this whole thing. But I remember like that period of time, it was very exciting, and school was always kind of like such a drag anyway. And I was like, man, I can't be doing what people are telling me to do. I'm gonna go and try to do something myself.
Yeah. And
so I dropped out of school, and I recorded a second record mostly in the bathroom of my dorm room or the dorm building in Boston that I was living in. I went back to California, and we released the second record. It's called The Shakes. And The Shakes, was like, we independently released it. We're like, yeah, fuck it. Like, just do the same thing. That also had like college journal, music journal rankings and stuff, which is again, kind of all small. But I got a call one day from a manager who managed the Killers back in the day in San Francisco. Managed a couple other bands at the time. And I had a residency at a place called Doc Ricketts, which was the Purple Onion.
Oh yeah.
And then some dudes from the Independent went and started running that as a different club briefly, which is now closed and defunct. But their first month, I had a weekly residency there.
Oh wow.
In 2014, and then these dudes from LA kind of came up, and that's kind of when the game changed for me.
Okay.
For a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You came back. You said back to California. Did you come back to San Francisco?
I came back home.
Was that ever a question? You're like, I'm done with that. I stayed there for a little while and recorded with this and that. But then you're like, what was that decision like?
I had when I was in school, I started playing with a band. And the band was really great, and I was trying to convince them all to drop out of school and move to New York City.
Yes.
And they were not having it. So I always had this. I still this day, like I still wish I could live in, and maybe someday I will live in New York. But at that time I was like, man, like this is like maybe it'll be something. I can do something there, whatever. And so I kind of had this thought of maybe like getting out. But I also was always really curious about San Francisco, mostly because when I was growing up, San Francisco is a very 21 and over town. And growing up, we started going to bars when we were like 16. Mm-hmm. There was no alcohol rules really. Which is cool, I think very formative. But when it came down to like playing shows and shit, you had to be over 21. Yeah. Because you need to have your fucking W-9 or else they would know. But there's it's whatever, much more serious. And so I never really experienced like the real world of music entertainment here until I kind of came back in that period of time. Before that, I kind of saw it from afar, and I always listened to there's a handful of bands in the aughts that were super formative to me that were San Francisco bands. Like Darker My Love, Tim Presley, the guy who now has a band called White Fence, and fucking Morning Benders were out of Berklee, like all the kind of John Vanderslice world of stuff. And I always looked up to that. Like when I first heard like handful of that shit when I was like 14 or 15, really formative years, I was like, man, this San Francisco girls like Christopher Owens, there was all this shit where I was like, man, it's super formative to me, and like I want to be a part of that.
And I'm from there.
And I'm from, right. No, and I was there at the time when it was happening, but I was too young. Right. And by the time I came of age, all that shit was gone.
Right.
So, it's like, and I didn't realize that before I left school. But when I left school, I kind of, I was like, man, like, why wouldn't I try to weasel my way into like the fresh and onlys and the fucking OCs and all this shit that's happening there at Tysegal and everything. And then I realized when I got back that it had left in 2012 or whatever, and I was kind of shit out of luck. And that's when I started kind of shifting down to Los Angeles.
Okay. That's all right. Oh yeah. Boom, boom, yeah. But you do live here now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
otherwise we're just going to delete this recording.
No. I moved. I started to try to move to LA through the management deal I had gotten in 2014, and that was like with a handful of their bands were super large, and I started hanging out with celebrities and shit, and I was like doing cocaine and drinking and being fucking out of control, and it was like all exciting, and it was like the first time in my life really that I felt like I like was like acknowledged as being good at anything, all the things that happen with insecurities growing up, and then not like having, and then suddenly being like important for no reason at all, like I felt like that was kind of where I was at, and it was unsustainable.
You're alive now, so
I'm alive now. Somehow. It was a fast time for a moment, and all sorts of things were supposed to happen, and things did happen. I mean, I have all sorts of songs. I wrote songs with all sorts of really talented artists, and I've experienced a lot of things, went on tour a bunch, but it kind of like all that kind of the gears started to kind of rust really quickly when I was down there. And I kind of spun out, and this is amazing. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but actually I can because I mean to. But I was dropped by the management company. There's a handful of different issues for that, which are not really totally my fault actually, but it's not something I'm going to get into. Anyway, I thought that once that fell out, my shit was fucked. I thought my career was over, and I was 20. I was 20 years old, and I joined a band, or I was hired briefly to like kind of sit in with a band called the Sulfite 60s, who actually were the first band. They had a moment in San Francisco briefly. They were, when I was in high school, they were like playing the chapel a bunch and, selling out shows. And Jim, who I was the producer, like had got me to hang some of my first sessions I hung out for when I was like 16 were like this band's sessions, which must have been really weird for them. There's like a 16-year-old kid hanging out. Just hanging out. But anyway, they allowed me to come and they were kind enough to allow me to come and play with them a little bit. And after that, I was like, I'm going to go back to SF and see my parents. And I was arrested in the Presidio. I was kind of drunk, but not really. And I was driving my car, and I was underage. I got pulled over, and then I had like 20 fake IDs in my wallet, some of which were not mine. And if
it was 21, you would have been fine.
Like a lot of cash. Yeah. It was all bad. And I got arrested on federal land, and I was like, damn, like wow, and just moved to LA, and all this shit was going, it wasn't going great, but I was like, I'm gonna deal with it, I was arrested, and I was put in. I had to go to court, and I was facing 5 years in federal penitentiary.
Oh shit!
And so I moved back to my parents' house because I had no money anymore, and and then I faced trial and ended up having like 3 years federal probation.
Okay.
But which took them like 2 years to charge me, so it took them a long time. But
that must have been a bummer because for that time, to a certain set of people, you were Andrew Naiman again.
Not exactly.
No. Oh, did you?
No, mostly because the people that were here, everyone I grew up with left.
Oh yeah. But I'm just saying, like, to the feds and to the judge.
Oh, the Fed. No, actually, that worked out really well.
Good.
Extremely well. Because they
listen
never,
to me, the feds.
Yeah, but the Fed, they never really knew that Andrew Naiman was Andrew St. James.
Okay.
So I got away with a lot of things.
Exactly. You're like,
I was put on federal probation. I got a lot of apologies from the marshal and from the probation because it was like such a slowly crime in their opinion. And the judge was a hardo, and it was a shitty time. And it was like getting drug tested every
And like
week,
you said, you were barely drunk.
I was only a little drunk, but dude, like I was under 21, and I had like 20 fake IDs.
The IDs.
So it was not good. It was very bad. But anywho, yeah, I mean, it's like at that point I was like, man, my life in entertainment is really over, and I'm fucked, and I don't know anyone in San Francisco because everyone I knew. Well, so let me get there. But yeah, so I was like, I just was really dejected. I mean, I was like, fucked, And my buddy Cesar, who was in college, he was a couple years younger than me. He moved back, he dropped out of school like I did 2 years later, and came to San Francisco, and I was like, man, like the only other talented person I kind of grew up around, and I was like, yeah, man, like, do you want to like play in my band? Because I still had a booking agent at the time, and I was like, had all these dates on the books, which I was like legally not allowed to go and do. And so I'd be like, yeah, like, I'm not gonna, I'll go to jail for playing music, dude. I don't give a fuck. Right. I mean, I don't want to go to jail for anything else, but if it has to do with like sustaining my music career, then like, fuck it. Like, I mean, I guess I can kind of cross that in my brain. And so, I'd leave my like wallet and my phone at home with my mom, and I would like take out like $500 in cash or whatever, and we would hit the road, and Cesar would be the point of contact for everything. I don't think that the federal government can fuck me now, so
statute of limitations.
Off probation now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anyway, so I just like go and there's a lot of like really close calls with that, but during that period of time, like I still had tours and shit. And so I just was breaking the law and facing like, if they'd caught me, I've doing that, I would have, had to go to see the judge and see if the judge wanted me to put me into LAPOC for fucking 3 years. So, you know what I mean? Like I was like risking my ass. But I was like, at the same time, I was still figuring out like, I was like, man, what is San Francisco for me? Like, what can I do here with this situation that I'm like stuck here? Cause I can't, I saw Los Angeles as an escape from the fact that San Francisco and the way in which people had talked about it had died or whatever, quote unquote, like in 2012, and I was like 2014 or whatever. Right. And so I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And I had a manager at the time, a new manager in San Francisco, and I was talking to him, and I was like, man, like I want to throw parties. Because I think there's only one way I can meet people, and I don't think people want to come to shows with music unless they want to get drunk. Like, I don't think they want to come and see music. Like, right. I mean, unless they're tricked into doing it. And he was like, I don't think you're right, And I was like, well, I think I'm right. And I want to do this at Amnesia because it seems to be the place where people are doing that, but it's only beer and wine. But people are still really drunk there and go to the show, and it seems to be a vibe, and I'd like to do it there. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "You're fucking crazy. It's not going to be a thing. Like, like if you do this and you fuck it up, then it's going to be the end of your reputation here." Literally, what he said to me.
When was this?
This is 2015, 16.
Okay.
2016. And I was like, dude, I don't believe. I think you're an asshole, and I don't think that that's true. But I also have nothing to lose. Like, I literally have nothing to lose at this point. I've lost everything that I worked up to. I'm going to try this. He goes, fuck it. What's the point? And I, through him, I met now Chronicle writer named Adrian Spinelli. And Adrian and I started the Fast Times parties at Amnesia. And they were fucking fast and loose, dude. Like, from the start. Mostly because I didn't know anybody, so I was, like, bullshitting all sorts of people to play. And luckily for me, the people who I met that worked there, Greg DiMartino is a bartender. He's a band called Tino Dreama. Greg is like a fucking Casanova. He's like amazing. Okay. He's truly amazing. Mac is doing sound there. Is in a band called the French Cassettes, also like an incredible band that does really quite well. There's just like a handful of different people that were around there, like that were super special and like were kind of helped me a lot and really didn't give a shit about anything. So like, we could basically get away with anything. And I realized that really quickly. Adrian, I think, was a little put off by that. Mm-hmm. And so he was like I fired the manager because he was an asshole and was, didn't believe in me.
He was wrong.
And he was wrong and he didn't believe in me. And I was like, fuck you. And I mean, no hard feelings, but he was not right for the job. And Adrian, who met me through him, was like, all right, like, let me step back and you can do what you want. And then I inherited the monthly night. And through the monthly night, I think all of my current consciousness was born. I think I kind of was like reborn through that like 2-year span of Amnesia shows.
And were you playing and hosting or?
Hosting, yeah. I mean, I was trying to book. Basically, the idea was I was trying to unite. As I saw it, and as I still see it, there's a handful of different musical scenes in San Francisco that are super small
Yep.
and insular, and they don't interact with one another.
Right.
And a lot of them do shows at tiny clubs like Make It Room or at Knockout or whatever. And there's not the draw is not high, and therefore no one's making money. And so I was like, man, I think that if we all want to make money, we should probably get together and like have some sort of way where there's people are really awkward and hard to talk to and whatever. And I understand that people are a little cagey, and that's perfectly fine. But if that is taken away somehow from that sort of social structure, I think that it'll be beneficial for everybody. And then also it will allow there to be a little bit more competition between all the acts that are there, because in these different scenes, they're like super talented acts, but they're all very separate from one another. And if they were all together at the same time, then maybe through that there would be a little bit more like contention in a way that's healthy for creative output and just like have there be some sort of like healthy competition to make everyone better. And just
exposure too, like for to see different styles of music,
styles and acts
different
and stuff.
Yeah,
and at the same time, all these people are all very similar, like kind and similarly like, competent and cool and all these other things. And so it was kind of like, a no-brainer. And so through the Amnesia thing, I kind of attempted to do that. And that became the only way I could really bullshit people into doing it was like having some of my like closest party friends be there to like party them into
make it a party
into being into being comfortable. like basically not giving a shit anymore and but like being like and being comfortable being good or being whoever they are, like whatever the fuck unique, whatever, like it's all cool, like like it's that's special. And so like anyway, so we created the party and it kind of blew up a little bit. There was a lot of ridiculous like failures, but like of nights that were just like so fucked, but still like if that was fun, it was still funny. Like every part of it was funny as fuck, and it was nice because everything I did before that was so like important, self-important, and like everything had to be so right, and it became very like tame, like people like all the shit just was like, I'd go play noise pop sets or something and I'd be like play this perfect show, or whatever, and the writer from the paper would write about it or whatever, and then it would be like, oh, that's really great, but like nothing would come of it, but I fuck up one show at Amnesia and like 100 people are talking about it, and it was like, man, like, but in this way that's like not like terrible, is more endearing than it was like bad, and it's something clicked in my brain, and I formulated two bands through that, the Juan Wayne band, which was always a joke with Cesar and I, because Cesar was taking care of me throughout the time in which I was like potentially going to go to jail, touring, and we always have this joke. His name's Cesar Maria Hamilton, Cesar Maria as what he goes by, and he's a white man, and I was like, man, if you're Cesar Maria, we were in some argument, and I was like, if you're Cesar Maria, motherfucker, I'm Juan Wayne, bitch, like, we had this whole thing, but we were coming to blows at some night, but it stuck kind of, and we were like, oh, maybe we should make a fucking stupid band called Juan Wayne, dress like cowboys, but like play songs like Oasis and Elliott Smith, like that's what we're gonna do. And and eventually we kind of did that. We 2017, 18, I think I went down to LA where he lives, and we recorded a record, first Juan Wayne record, which is now out, on his 8-track tape machine, and it sounded super fucking depressing, but very but like kind of hooky, and the songs are quite good, I'd say. And so I started at Amnesia, to show like the regular dudes who were playing, like people that were playing, like, here, like, check out this Juan Wayne shit. What do you think? And they're all like, fuck, they all got super stoked on it.
Awesome.
And so I was like, yeah, well, let's do a Juan Wayne show. We have like front people of like every band, like be the Juan Wayne band.
Right.
And so the Juan Wayne band became like every so often we played these songs before anyone was ever released or anything, but we'd all get, out of control and dress like cowboys and play these rock and roll songs, and people just started losing their shit. And that was a total creation of the party. Like that was like the Juan Wayne was like a creation of my relationship with Cesar, but also like was a creation through the party and the collectivism of like giving up, kind of, giving up the allure of importance or something that I think is inherently a problem, I think, now in town, creatively, because I think it segregates people from one another.
And maybe focusing on the wrong thing versus just kind of like, let's just have fun with it, or I don't
Right. Well,
come together kind of thing.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no, completely. So at a point, the parties kind of they got to a point where it seemed like I wanted to kind of move up the ladder a little bit into larger shows. I couldn't get larger bands to play at Amnesia, and so I was like, let's go and maybe try the Chapel. And I'd met a woman named Ashley Graham who worked at the Fillmore, and I'd opened a show at the Fillmore. I believe that's how I met her. I kind of talked to her about the idea of like, hey, can we like try to do, move this party like up the line? And I apparently convinced her, and she got me on line with the Chapel people, and then we started throwing parties at the Chapel. We had 3 parties before the pandemic that were all really great, and that was like really exciting. Still doing the stuff at Amnesia. Amnesia closed because it's San Francisco, and
R.I.P.
then we moved that party to the Makeout Room, which is now still happening.
Yes.
It returned every third Thursday going forward now.
When did it
at the Makeout
return?
Room. September.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. At the point of the pandemic, everything was kind of, I've had a residency in LA with the One Wayne band. This Fast Times band, which I haven't talked about very much, was like kind of doing its thing here. And we had a tour like going out. We were about to go on the road. And then the pandemic hit. And all these plans, kind of fell apart. I also just like gotten off of federal probation like a week before the pandemic hit. So I was like, man, I had all my shit set for me. Dude.
Fucking universe. Thanks,
ready,
universe.
Dude. I was so ready. And then I just got fucked, But this is the way things go. And about a month into it, I was like, man, what the fuck am I going to do? And I called Ashley on the phone, and she was like, man, like, do you want to like just play to people on the street? And I was like, man, I guess we could do that, like we could like, we kind of came up with this idea, and then we started like being like, hey, like hit me up on Instagram, we'll go like play on the street in front of your house for like 3 songs and bullshit with you and say what's good. And at first it was just friends, and it was kind of cool. And then it kind of got picked up by the like local news and shit. So the radio that had been covering my shit for a while, luckily, were nice enough for them to have cared about any of the music I've ever made, and they've like started talking about it, like Live 105 or Alt 105, which is now Fred or whatever. But there's like a handful of other kind of smaller, like then like KMEL and Calix, and we're all super kind to start talking about it, and then through that, the newspaper started writing about it, and then we got on local television, which is insane because. Went from playing to like, people who would like be at shows or like are like in the bar world or like are kind of like in nightlife, like adjacent somehow, people I'd seen somewhere or whatever, like to being like, you're going to Stockton today to play to a family, a single mom who's like has like 4 kids and has been like dealing with 4 kids for like fucking 6 months alone, or like an old woman who is like has been alone for a year,
right?
Or like someone who's like dying from cancer, like crazy, like a kid who's like terminally ill. Like it's like it went from being like kind of this party thing to like this like very very real like community thing where it was like just like going up and saying hi.
Right.
It was just like seeing somebody else. It had nothing to do with the music or anything or me.
Yeah.
Like it was just, or Scott, who shares a space with me, like came with me with all of it, and so did Ashley, and that kind of like that was a very astounding thing because I think for years of, the reason why we started throwing parties is because it was like people don't give a shit about music, so we need to get people drunk to like have them give a fuck about anything that's happening here,
right?
That comes from a level of being pretty jaded, and then going and like seeing people actually respond emotionally, like in certain like circumstances that you would never be able to reach in the regular world of playing like club shows or whatever, like
and taking music to them.
Right. No, and for no money, dude. Like, there's so many people who are like, "How much do we pay you?" And I was like, Scott's on unemployment. I'm getting paid have a job still somehow, and we're all like we don't. It's not about the money. Like,
I want to wrap with this,
yes.
And that is our theme this season for the show is "We're Still Here."
My family left. I've had a lot of friends leave. Artist friends, majority of them have left. I have a lot of friends I grew up with that are gone. A lot of the people I looked up to growing up in music and stuff are no longer here. It's a difficult time to be here, and I think that it has been for a long time. But it's a little bit more poignant now with the return to return to kind of normalcy, because a lot of like the businesses or the places that were like still that were also holding on are not there anymore. Mm-hmm. And so there's even less security than there was beforehand. And that is really troubling. But I do think that there is like, with the people that are still here, you know, that decide to continue to hustle through all the shit and figure out something that's going to work, like, you know, and all the issues with the city and all these issues with the fucking, you know, just all of the problems that one deals with living here and running a business here or working for a business here, what have you.
Being
like,
an artist.
Being an artist, like it's, and not being necessarily very appreciated by the general city as it were, mm-hmm. or the city that is now here. You know, it's there's the people who are left are, I think, are the building blocks for the future.
That was Andrew St. James. On the next Storied San Francisco, get to know poet and editor Shizue Siegel. Episode 28 drops next Tuesday, wherever you listen to podcasts. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 160 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, please rate and review our show so we can reach even more folks. We love email. Drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay healthy, keep dreaming, and we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.